I've been creating content for other people since 2016. And if you've seen their videos on social media, there's a very good chance that my team either scripted it, shot them, edited them, or strategized them, or maybe all of the above. But here's the thing, my own content was getting really stale. I always put my clients first and me last, or many times never. And here's the thing, I kept telling myself that had to change. And if I'm telling my clients that they need to create content and I'm not creating any for myself, then why should they trust me? So I did something about it. So here's what I did. I went and found one of the top viral coaches on Instagram and I hired them to be the agency that works for me. So my logic is this, I always put my clients first and me last. So I figured if I hire another agency, they might treat me the same way. I didn't go and choose the cheap option. I chose an agency that charges about what I charge for my clients. And then I handed myself over to them. And here's what happened. They delivered exactly what they promised. They analyzed my competitors. They found the outlier videos in my niche. They scripted everything for me. And then I shot everything right here in this living room. I put my phone on a tripod. I've shot thousands of videos, by the way, and this part shouldn't have been hard. And I remember reading that first script on my phone before we shot it, and something felt a little bit off. This must be how my clients feel when I hand them a script that I write for them. And I just needed to get used to it. So I did the whole thing. They edited it. And then I watched the playback. The words were perfect. The hooks were optimized. The structure was textbook. And every frame was doing what content is supposed to do. And none of it sounded like me. Not the phrasing, not the thoughts, not the rhythm of how I actually talk. And here's the thing that should have actually made me happy. The metrics and the performance was actually better than average. I got more views, I got more engagement, I got more comments. It was working, it was doing its job. But 2 months later, I fired them. And it had nothing to do with them doing a bad job because they were actually doing a really good job. It was because I realized I was building a version of me that wasn't real, a better performing version, a more optimized version, and a completely fake one. And that's when the question hit me, the question that this entire video is set out to answer. The question is this, if I were to remove me from the content and the numbers, the performance, the views go up, then what exactly is it that I'm building? Now, I wanna say something that most viral content coaches are going to hate. And it's this, the advice that everybody's giving right now is to, number one, find outlier videos. Number two, use AI to rewrite them for your niche. And then three, post a lot of them. Now, that advice isn't stupid. 6 months ago, it was probably the right call. You know what? I taught a version of this myself, but here's what's changed. Everybody got the same advice. Everybody has the same AI tools. Everybody is scanning the same outliers. You're not an outlier anymore. You are the pattern. And the top influencers that I know privately, the ones who are paying to be in the same masterminds that I'm in, they're the ones people pay for advice. And they're telling me in private that their organic reach is collapsing. Not because their content got worse, because the quality is still there, but because the strategy of the outlier format, it stopped working the moment everybody started using it. And even if you do get viewed, you're just gonna look like every other coach out there doing the exact same thing. So here's the line that none of these coaches wanna say out loud. The outlier strategy, it works. The views go up, the engagement looks great, the numbers move in the right direction. And that is exactly why this is the most dangerous advice in the coaching industry right now. Because you can build an audience of 100,000 people who love your content and will never buy from you, who follow you because a formula worked, who see you as one of 1,000 interchangeable coaches saying the same optimized thing. You're no longer considered a unique coach. You've just become another influencer. Let me show you why this keeps happening, because what's happening to coaches right now has actually been happening to every creative industry for the last 100 years. So let's think about this. For the last 100 years, do you remember when movies first came out? If you're old enough, I wasn't old enough, but I do know a couple names like Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, Judy Garland. And in order to get to Hollywood and to become a superstar, you had to do 3 things. Those 3 things were, you had to sing and dance and act simultaneously. If you weren't world-class at all 3 of these, then this was the moat. You weren't gonna get to being a Hollywood superstar. You weren't gonna be cast in a movie. Now, what happened after that? After musicals kind of had their day, then dramas started becoming a thing. And then once dramatic movies, where they weren't singing and dancing the whole time, then you no longer had to do all that, you just had to learn to act. That moat went away. So this was a cultural shift. Now, the next thing that came up was if you wanted to be a superstar singer, what did you have to do? It sounds really basic, but you had to actually sing on key. You had to know how to follow a tune. What happened? I think it was around 1997 when auto-tune came out. What this means is that as long as you look good, you sing okay, and you know how to dance shake your booty on camera, then you could become a superstar. This moat of having to actually sing on key live, we're talking about people like Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, those kind of people, they no longer had to be that talented because there was auto-tune. That moat was gone. Now let's talk about if you wanted to be an internet celebrity. Now, even before the internet, this was the case where you had to actually have some expensive video gear. You had to understand the technology, you have to have the expensive equipment, editing bays. I remember when video editing wasn't a computer or a phone, it was an entire room. That's obviously no longer the case. All you need is a great phone. So with an iPhone, any 12-year-old with a bit of time and a creative idea can make amazing professional level quality. So it brings us all the way here to right now. If you want to be a viral coach or an influential coach at all, then it used to be that you had to do the outlier pattern. This is a strategy where you look for what's doing really well online, what's doing proportionately well on someone else's channel, copy that idea, use AI to rewrite it, and then make your own thing. That strategy, it's had its day. Here's what's going on, is that everybody is doing it, and then AI can generate these, and what you're gonna look like is every other coach who's doing the exact same thing as you, meaning you no longer stand out. I'm curious, did you notice something about this timeline, how it accelerates at each stage? So take, for example, the Gene Kelly mode, where you had to sing, act, and dance at the same time. That took decades to destroy. Auto-tune and singing on key, that came a little bit later. The video gear, when the iPhone came out, that was 2007, that took even less time. This is barely a blip. The outlier pattern is no longer gonna make you an outlier, which means that potentially every moat that you've built your business on so far is already on the clock. You just don't know what yours is yet. And it's about to get worse because in 2026, something is happening that makes every other moat destruction look slow by comparison. You know voice cloning, right? It crossed what researchers are calling the indistinguishable threshold this year, 2026. 3 seconds of your voice recording is enough to replicate you completely. Deepfakes, you remember that? That went from 500,000 videos online in 2023 to 8 million in 2025. So you gotta ask yourself this. If your voice can be cloned, your face can be deepfaked, your production can be replicated by a phone, your strategy can be copied by 1,000 other coaches running the exact same AI strategy, what's left? So what's the one moat that technology can't touch? 2 lines. Let me show you how this works. First of all, do cool stuff. Secondly, talk about it. But stay with me because I'm about to show you what this actually looks like and why it's the one thing that can't be cloned, deepfaked, copied, or automated by AI. In order for this to feel real, let me tell you about my moat. Not my brand, not my positioning, my actual moat. Here goes. I was born in a cult. Over 100 people living in one house. I'm not exaggerating. It was communal everything. I thought it was normal because when you're a kid, whatever your normal is, it's just normal, right? We weren't allowed to watch any TV or movies that weren't pre-approved by the cult leaders. Not kidding. We could only listen to music made by fellow cult members, and sometimes it was pretty janky, but that's all we had, so it was okay, right? I had no idea what the actual world music scene was until I was almost an adult. That's weird. I know it's weird now, but I didn't know it was weird then. I left home at 17. I was trying to run away from the cult actually. And the way I decided where to go is I closed my eyes, I spun a globe, and I pointed. And the first try landed right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So the second try was India. And that's how my life actually started, my second life. It started with a globe, a finger, and 2 tries. I had about $3,000 in my pocket, and I thought I was rich. So India was supposed to be super cheap. I was gonna live like a king, and I ran out of money in 2 weeks. I couldn't call my parents, I was way too embarrassed for that. So instead I started a business. I imported cheap knockoff jewelry from India and sold it in Japan. I didn't start a company because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I started a company because I was 17 and broke in Mumbai with no plan. A few years later, I was sent to film a documentary in Uganda, and a part of my job was to film this educational program going on in these schools. These schools were so basic that there were literally no floor. It was just dirt and there was no chairs. Kids were literally sitting on rocks. And here's where things took a twist. The teacher was French, and because I was officially assigned to film her, I had permission to stare at her all day long through my viewfinder without anyone thinking I was a creep. So we started dating a week later, and today we've been married for 24 years. And we got 6 kids. Now, 6 kids is a lot, but here's one thing it means. Until just 2 years ago, when my youngest ones were finally ready to move out, I never actually owned a car that I actually wanted to drive, ever. I spent 20 years driving a people mover because 6 kids means you need 8 seats, 8 seats means the only car you can drive is a minivan, and there's no such thing as a cool minivan. Everything I just shared is not in anyone else's content strategy, but it is in mine because it is mine. Years later, I started a business for personal development, and the very first event I ran, I was super happy. We sold about 2,000 tickets, and I had a super famous speaker coming in from overseas. I was really excited, but it was also the worst event I ever ran because the speaker never showed up. I had 2,000 people waiting, my very first live event, and I had to figure out what to do in real time. So I had to cancel and relaunch and spend the next 2 years paying back ticket buyers from the profits of future events. That's a completely different video. It's a very long one. But every time I tell that story, people sit up, just like you are right now. They lean in, and a lot more than when I talk about content strategy. You see, I built and sold a separate multi-7-figure business, and the day after the sale felt like any other Tuesday. It's kind of like the day after your birthday when someone asks, how does it feel to be 29? What are you supposed to say? It's only special until you turn 20 maybe, and after that it's just a number. You see, I built a 7-figure agency, and that's still running. And we've made content for some of the biggest names in the space. None of that is a resume. What I'm sharing right now is raw material. That's the stuff nobody else can claim. Nobody else was there. Nobody else lived the experience that I did. And that's the only thing AI cannot touch. They can duplicate the craft, they can duplicate the format, but they can't duplicate the fact that I was there and you weren't. Because every time I shared one of these stories about the Colt, the globe, spinning that around, India, Uganda, the event that went wrong, somebody at the table would stop me and ask me the same question. Every time they would say this, why have you not yet written a book about your life? And I've been asked this exact same question hundreds of times, no exaggeration. So at some point I realized that that question was my signal. My moat was never my strategy. My moat was never my agency. My moat was never about my content. My moat is my life. The only thing I was missing was giving myself permission to talk about it. Nobody in the world can out Ken Okazaki, and nobody can out you. That's not a motivational poster, but I hope you did get motivated. That's actually a valid business model. And once you understand this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. You can't unsee it. For example, Taki Moore, who's my mentor, he experiments with marketing, he does the cool shit, and then he talks about the experiments that he ran. And he attracts a bunch of customers, and then he gets to do more cool stuff with that. Alex Hormozi, he does cool stuff. He builds 9-figure companies, and then he talks about it. He explains what he's doing to build them up, and then he does more cool shit. Chris Do, he runs his agency, he works on real projects for real clients, and then he shows his work. His content is his receipt. Vin Ging, he got obsessed with communication, the actual craft, and he's doing cool stuff. And then he spent years on real stages in front of real audiences, and him talking about it, his content, is his mastery of communication being displayed. All 4 come from different industries, different audiences, but they use the same pattern. Do cool stuff, talk about it. Also, did you notice that none of them are lecturing on how to make viral content? They're just too busy doing the cool stuff to teach you how to make the fake cool stuff. Now, here's what I want you to hear. Hacking the algorithm will work if views are all you care about. If you want to build a moat that AI cannot touch and 1,000 copycats cannot erode, you have to actually do cool shit and then talk about it. I'm gonna leave you with 2 questions. Now, most of you are gonna answer the first one, but I want you to really sit with question number 2. If you allow yourself to really sit with this, it is going to change the game for you. It's this: what have I done that's worthy of sharing? What have I done that is worthy of creating content about? So, like and share this video if you made it all the way to the end. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.